I married into a family that never smiled in photographs. A family with a house too large for its silence. And a history too dark for its walls to forget. They told me their 3 daughters disappeared in 1953. No bodies. No witnesses. No police ever solved it. The case just faded. Like the girls themselves. But the first night I slept in that house, I heard 3 knocks at 3:03 a.m. The second night, I saw 3 pale handprints on the hallway mirror. And on the third, I opened a drawer and found a photograph I was never meant to see. It was dated 1952. It showed the Rowan daughters standing in front of the very room I was now sleeping in. But behind them was someone else. Someone tall. Faceless. And still watching. I should have left. But now I know why no one ever does. Because the moment you enter the Rowan family, you don't just marry into their name. You inherit their curse. When I first met Michael Rowan, he seemed like a man trying to escape his past. He didn't talk much about his family. Didn't visit them on holidays. Didn't even mention that he grew up in a house that looked like it belonged in a museum, or a mausoleum. But 6 months after our wedding, his mother invited us to stay. Just for a few weeks, she said, the house has missed having family. It was the Rowan estate. An ancient home buried deep in the forests of northern Maine, surrounded by fog, thick trees, and the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat feel too loud. From the moment I stepped through the iron gates, I knew this place remembered things. Terrible things. The air was heavy. The halls smelled like dust and lavender. And everywhere, were portraits. All of them staring. All of them Rowan daughters. But never smiling. And never more than 3 of them. Michael never mentioned them. So I asked. His answer was a whisper. They vanished in 1953. I thought he meant they ran away. I thought maybe there was a family scandal. But I didn't know. That the daughters never left the house. And that something else, something older, never let them go. Clapperboard Act 1, settling in. We arrived at the Rowan estate just after sunset. The drive through the woods had been unnervingly silent, no birds, no crickets. Even the trees stood too still, like they were listening. As we approached the main house, the tires crunched gravel with the kind of echo you feel in your spine. The mansion was taller than I imagined, 3 stories high, with black windows like empty eyes. Ivy wrapped around its frame like veins on pale skin. A marble angel stood in the garden, cracked and headless. Michael parked, exhaled deeply, and said nothing. Inside, the scent of old wood and dried roses hit me like a wall. I immediately noticed how cold it was. The fireplace had been lit, but the warmth never seemed to reach the floorboards. The house was alive with shadows, long, crawling things that never quite stayed still. His mother, Evelyn Rowan, stood waiting in the foyer. She wore all black and had a voice that barely rose above a whisper. "So you're the new Mrs. Rowan," she said, not smiling. She showed me to our room on the 2nd floor. As I passed each hallway, I felt the weight of eyes on me, not human eyes, but painted ones. Portraits lined every wall, and in nearly all of them were the same 3 girls, dressed in lace and ribbons, never older than 10. I stopped at one particular painting. 3 daughters. Standing in front of the very staircase I had just walked down. Except in the painting, there was a 4th figure. Almost hidden in shadow. A tall, pale blur, barely visible behind them. Evelyn noticed me staring. "That one's old," she said. "You must be tired." But I wasn't. I was frozen. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard soft footsteps above us. But there was no room above us, only the attic. I asked Michael, "Did you hear that?" He said, "It's just the house settling." But the steps continued. Slow. Deliberate. They stopped right above our bed. At exactly 3:03 a.m., something tapped the bedroom mirror. 3 times. I sat up, heart pounding. But nothing was there. The mirror was clean. Except for one faint handprint in the corner. Smaller than mine. Clapperboard Act 2, Discovery of the Past. Over the next few days, I tried to ignore the strange things. The flickering lights. The chill in the dining room that never left. The way Evelyn always seemed to be listening to something that no one else could hear. Michael kept himself busy with repairs around the house. But I started noticing that certain rooms were avoided. Particularly the drawing room at the far end of the hall, where the curtains were always drawn and the door always shut tight. One morning, while exploring, I pushed it open. Dust exploded in the air. The room was untouched, frozen in time. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed. But what caught my eye was the wall. It was filled with drawings. Crayon sketches, charcoal outlines. Hundreds of childlike pictures taped, pinned, and framed. Most of them featured 3 girls, sometimes playing in a garden, sometimes holding hands. But in many of them, there was a 4th figure. Always tall. Always faceless. Drawn in black crayon, with long arms stretching toward the girls. Some pictures had the word "him" scribbled in red. One simply said, "He watches from the walls." That night, I found a locked drawer in the bedroom desk. Michael didn't know what was in it. He claimed the key had been lost long ago. But I couldn't sleep. At 2:45 a.m., I returned to the desk. Something inside me said, "Check again." And when I ran my fingers underneath the drawer, I felt it, a taped key. Inside, I found a leather-bound journal. It belonged to Margaret Rowan, the eldest daughter who vanished in 1953. The pages were unevenly written, some in careful cursive, others in frantic, jagged lines. May 3, 1953. Mama says never open the attic. But I heard voices. They call my name. Margaret, Margaret, Margaret. We played with chalk and made a circle. Now something's different. Elizabeth says she saw a man inside the mirror. I believe her. He doesn't have eyes, but he sees everything. May 11, 1953. We made a promise. We wouldn't go back. But Emily did. She said she just wanted to look. That night, her bed was empty. No one heard her scream. I did. I always do. May 21, 1953. Mama says they're missing. But they're still here. I hear them laughing under the floor. I saw Emily's braid hanging in the fireplace. I didn't tell anyone. No one would believe me. But he's still hungry. I dropped the journal. My hands were shaking. That same night, while walking back from the kitchen, I passed by the mirror in the hallway. For just a second. I saw them. 3 girls. Standing behind me. Hair curled. Dresses torn. Eyes hollow. When I turned, no one was there. But the mirror was fogged. And someone had written something across it, from the inside. Find US. I backed away, breath caught in my throat. Then I noticed the attic door at the end of the hallway was cracked open, just slightly. I never touched it. Michael never did. And Evelyn always kept it locked. But that night, it was waiting for me. Clapperboard Act 3, Unraveling the Mystery. The attic door stood slightly open, creaking with the weight of secrets. My heartbeat grew louder than my footsteps as I approached. Every part of me screamed not to go up. But something else, something I couldn't explain, pulled me. The stairs groaned beneath my feet. The attic smelled like old smoke and dried wood. Dust swirled in the air like ash. A single window let in the moonlight. In the center of the room sat 3 small wooden chairs, arranged in a circle. On each one, a name carved into the back. Emily. Margaret. Elizabeth. In the middle of the circle was a cracked porcelain doll, one eye missing, its mouth open like it was mid-scream. And around the circle, a series of symbols, drawn in chalk, faded with time. They weren't childlike doodles. They were symbols of binding, protection, or summoning. I took a picture. My hands trembled. But when I looked at my phone screen, the chairs were empty. And in the photo, there was a 4th chair. One that wasn't there a moment ago. I turned. The attic was still empty. Except for the soft sound of breathing. Not mine. Low. Deep. Coming from the corner, where moonlight didn't reach. Then, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I ran. The next morning, I confronted Evelyn. I showed her the journal. She stared at it without touching it. Then said only one thing. They made a promise. And promises echo. What promise? I demanded. What happened to them? Evelyn finally met my eyes. You want to know the truth, she said. Then you must see what the house remembers. She led me down to the basement. It was colder than outside. A thick iron door stood at the end, bolted shut. She handed me the key, and left. Inside was a room. No windows. One light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, burnt photographs, and handwritten notes. The headlines chilled me. Rowan daughters disappear, no trace found. Family refuses polygraph test, police baffled. Neighbors report screaming, Rowan claims it was the wind. And then, a journal entry written by Evelyn herself. June 1st, 1953. They found the chalk. They found the words. I begged them not to play. But curiosity always has a price. He came through the crack. We opened it too wide. I tried to end it. I failed. Now the house feeds him. I stepped back. This wasn't just a haunted house. It was a prison. And something was still trapped inside, with their blood. I looked around the room again. A family tree hung on the wall. But 3 names had been scratched out violently. The daughters. And one name was circled in red ink. Mine. I hadn't told anyone my full name. I married Michael. But I kept my maiden name, until I signed the marriage license. And now. This house knew me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air was wrong. Michael didn't speak. At 3:03 a.m., the sound of a piano playing echoed through the halls. But there was no pianist. Only music. Soft, broken, familiar. I followed it. Back to the drawing room. The grand piano sat open. Keys moved, on their own. As the last note played, I saw them again. 3 girls. Standing behind the piano. Smiling. Not with joy. But with something darker. He wants you, they whispered. Because you're the 4th. Clapperboard Act 4, Confrontation and Revelation. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? 3 ghostly girls had told me I was the 4th. And deep inside, a part of me had already begun to believe that maybe I'd been chosen. But chosen for what? I needed answers, and there was only one person left who could give them. I found Evelyn the next morning in the conservatory. She was tending to the withered orchids with gloved hands, as though nothing was wrong. I saw them, I said. Your daughters. They spoke to me. She didn't flinch. She just kept watering the soil that no longer held any life. I told them to leave you alone, she whispered. They don't listen anymore. I stepped forward. What do they want from me? She finally looked up. Not them, she said. Him. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a folded, yellowing page with ancient symbols. The ritual, it was never meant to be real. It was just a game. Children playing with forces they didn't understand. But the symbols were correct. The words, precise. The offering, sincere. She closed her eyes. And he came. Who is he? I asked. My voice felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. She looked past me. To us, he was just a shadow. But to them, he was salvation. He offered them a way out. A different life. All they had to do was step into his world. I felt dizzy. You let this happen. I whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. I tried to stop it. But by the time I realized what they had summoned, it was too late. The portal was open. The house changed. I remembered the journal. The circle. The attic. Evelyn continued. Each generation, the curse awakens. And he must feed again. First, he calls. Then he marks. Then he takes. And I'm marked, I said hollowly. She nodded slowly. You entered the family. You stepped into the house. And you heard the knocks. That night, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Michael had avoided every question since we arrived. But now I needed the truth, from him. I found him in the hallway, standing beneath the old family portrait. Did you know? I asked. He didn't respond. Michael, did you know what this house was? What your family did? Still silence. Then, he spoke, but his voice was different. Some things, he said, are easier to forget. He turned. But his eyes weren't his anymore. They were black. Endless. And just for a second, I saw something standing behind his reflection in the hallway mirror. A tall figure. No face. Arms too long for its body. I ran. I locked myself in the bedroom, heart pounding. From behind the door, I heard footsteps. Not just one set. 3. Then a voice, whispered from every direction. The circle must be complete. I opened the journal again. There were pages I hadn't seen before, new ones. Written in handwriting that looked like mine. She arrived. She found the circle. She will take our place. A final line appeared as I stared at the page. Tonight, the fourth joins. And then, I remembered something Evelyn had said the day we arrived. The house has missed having family. I had to destroy it. Whatever it was, it lived in the attic. It started there, and it had to end there. I grabbed the journal, the page of symbols, and headed for the attic door. The house felt alive now. Walls pulsed like veins. Shadows moved on their own. The mirrors trembled as I passed. When I reached the attic, I was no longer alone. 3 girls stood in the circle. Emily. Margaret. Elizabeth. Their faces pale. Eyes hollow. Hair floating as if underwater. They didn't speak. But they pointed to the empty 4th chair. I stepped into the circle, every part of me shaking. I raised the journal and began reciting the reversal incantation Evelyn had written. The house screamed. Not with sound, but with energy. The walls shook. The floorboards cracked. The attic window shattered. And then, he appeared. Not as a figure. Not even as a shadow. But as a void. A tear in the world itself. A shape so wrong, it hurt to look at it. You called me, it said. You entered. You belong. No, I whispered. I break the circle. The chalk lines glowed red. The air turned to ice. The girls screamed, not in pain, but in relief. And in a final burst of energy, the attic exploded with blinding white light. Then, silence. I woke up 3 days later. In a hospital bed. Michael was gone. Evelyn was found in the attic, lifeless, but smiling. The Rowan estate burned to the ground. No one knew how. But in the ashes, they found something strange. 4 wooden chairs. Unburned. Arranged in a circle. And in the middle, a porcelain doll. I thought the nightmare had ended. 3 days in the hospital felt like waking up from a fever dream. Nurses whispered around me, afraid to ask questions. A detective showed up, asking about the fire. I told them the truth, but only the parts they would believe. I didn't mention the chalk circles. Or the 4th chair. Or the thing without a face that spoke inside my mind. Michael was never found. No signs of him in the house, in the woods, not even a footprint. Just vanished. They called it spontaneous disappearance. I knew better. He didn't leave. He was claimed. By the house. By whatever watched us through the mirrors. Whatever was hungry enough to keep the game going. The authorities ruled Evelyn's death as heart failure. But the look on her face, it wasn't fear. It was peace. As if she had finally paid her debt. They let me leave the hospital after a week. I returned to the city. I changed my last name back. I tried to forget. But the house wouldn't let me. 3 weeks later, I received a package. No return address. No note. Just an old, charred photograph. It was one of the Rowan daughters' portraits. But this time, there were 4 girls. And the one on the far right. She looked just like me. I moved apartments. Changed phone numbers. Burned every page of that journal. But then came the dreams. Dreams of a circle. Dreams of chairs creaking. Dreams of porcelain eyes blinking in the dark. And always, at exactly 3:03 a.m., I would wake up. To 3 soft knocks. I told myself it was trauma. Leftover fear. Nothing real. Until last night. When I came home and found chalk dust in the hallway. A small handprint on the mirror. And a crayon drawing on the wall, done in red. It showed 4 girls. Holding hands. With a 5th shadow standing behind them. And this time, the words scribbled across the bottom weren't childish or messy. They were written cleanly, as if by someone deliberate. The game begins again. I dropped the picture. Stepped back. And saw my own reflection smiling at me. But I wasn't smiling. The circle never broke. It only waited. Waited for a new house. A new name. A new bride. And now, it waits for you.